So with so many options, prices, and brands, choosing seeds might seem really complex. So stick around until the end because we're gonna break it down to make this process as simple and inexpensive as possible.
Do I have to buy expensive seeds?
So buying super expensive seeds doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna have better plants or a larger harvest at the end of the year. And we have some proof to back that up. But if you're brand new to homesteading or gardening and you're really not sure of your growing capabilities, then I would recommend to keep it on the less expensive side. And a lot of people always inquire about the Burpee brand. They ask, is it a good brand? Should I buy this one? Or should I buy Johnny's seeds? Honestly, I'd have to say from my own experience that it matters a lot more on how well you actually took care of that seedling, more so than it matters on the actual brand of seed. Now, just to back up what I'm talking about, Rikki's got some proof here for us.
These are just 2 of the bags that we had from last year out of how many?
I think we had 4 total that we saved for ourselves anyways.
And it's insane. We actually had so many last year that we actually had to give a bunch away to a bunch of my friends and my coworkers at the office. And those peppers are the Burpee brand, and we got a lot.
Yeah, so they're really great producers. We have no problem with the Burpee brand. We have no problem with the plants germinating from the seeds.
Should I buy heirlooms or hybrids?
So let's break down the difference between what an heirloom and a hybrid actually is. And there's one really cool difference that I'll get to in just a minute here. But an heirloom is a plant that has been around for many years, hundreds of years even. And it's a seed that's been saved over the course of time. Now the hybrid, on the other hand, is a little bit different because a hybrid, say you might have one tomato plant, for example, that produces really big fruit, and you might have another tomato plant that's just more disease resistant or even drought tolerant. What they do is they cross-pollinate those 2 plants and then produces a fruit with a seed that bears the property of both of those plants. Kind of cool, huh?
Yeah, that's cool.
And a hybrid does not mean that it is a GMO product either. So if you're worried about that, you're safe. There's some major differences though between how these 2 work. So for the heirloom, you can actually harvest the seeds from your fruit and use those seeds to regrow that same plant year after year.
Wow.
So if you want to save yourself a little extra money, you can go ahead, save a tomato off to the side, collect the seeds, and then you can use those for your following growing season. Generally with a heirloom, it'll also produce a more flavorful fruit or vegetable. The only downside is that they might be a little bit more difficult to grow just because they aren't a plant that is necessarily bred to be more resistant to drought or disease. So it might take a little bit more patience and a little bit more know-how to grow a heirloom versus a hybrid.
A little bit more love. Where should I buy my seeds?
There's actually lots of different options, and we can go into a little more detail on that. We usually go to our local home improvement store.
Menards.
That's one of our favorites. Or you can go to the Home Depot. Walmart has them. Dollar stores will even have them. And there's some of your cheapest seeds. The most affordable, I should say. Not necessarily cheap in quality, just more affordable. Now, if you're more experienced and you're not afraid to spend a little extra money, you could go to a website like Johnny Seeds and buy Johnny Select seeds, which are about twice as expensive as the Burpee brand. And there's a lot of other brands out there that I'm not familiar with, but you can buy them on Amazon. Pretty much anywhere you want to buy seeds, you can buy them. It's not super difficult.
Does it matter what kind of fruits and vegetables I buy?
Now, the fruits or vegetables that you plan to buy actually do matter for a number of reasons. You want to make sure that whatever you are buying, you plan to actually consume. Otherwise, you're just wasting your money. Now, the second reason that it matters which fruit and vegetable you're purchasing is because you want to make sure that you're buying seeds that are appropriate for your particular climate or your growing zone. And this is actually something that really discourages me when I see a lot of other, even seasoned gardeners talk about this. They always talk about the growing zones like they don't matter, because really the USDA zone hardiness map is more designed for perennials, and a lot of the fruits and vegetables that we grow are annuals. So they are right to an extent that the zones don't matter, but there's a lot of other good information that you can find out by knowing which zone you live in, like when your last and first frost dates are. And we're gonna go into this in a little bit more detail on one of my favorite websites that I found. So here we are on the Urban Farmer website. And this is a really nifty little website, and I'll be sure to provide a link down in the description below. But it's very helpful for those who are just getting into gardening or homesteading, and maybe they don't know a lot about their current growing zone. They don't know when their typical average last and first frost dates are. This is a very helpful website that can provide you with all of that information. And right here you can see a rough representation of the USDA zone hardiness map. So I know that I'm in growing zone 5 here, so I can go down here and click on growing zone 5. So here we are on the zone 5 vegetable planting calendar guide. All right, now this is really helpful. If you're not familiar with your first and last frost dates, it'll give you an idea of where they are, October 15th and May 15th. And we usually plant around Memorial Day, so toward the end of May, we're almost guaranteed to be done with frost by that point. And then you can actually come on down here a little bit further, and depending on what you're growing, you can find a scheduled timeline of when you should start your plants from seed, when you should start thinking about transplanting them outside, and then when you're going to start thinking about harvesting your produce that you're growing. Now, if we come back to this page here, we can click on our state, and that'll take us to this page. Now you actually see that the zones are broken down a little bit more. They get more detailed, but it's not that big of a deal. Here you can pick a city that's close to the area where you live, and then you can find out, hey, my last frost date is May 20th. First frost date's roughly September 26th. Like I said, these are just averages, just kind of gives you a rough idea. And then you can also find out per your zone within your state where you should start planting based on your planting schedule. And then if you click on this little learning download, it'll take you to a PDF for your particular state, and it gets really detailed. It's very nice. You go to your zone 5, you go down to April. Hey, it tells you to begin your beets, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, carrots, cauliflower, kale, lettuce, onions, peas, peppers, spinach, and tomatoes inside. It even tells you where you should be starting these. And then by June, you can plant your peppers and tomatoes outside. Those are the big ones that we grow, so that's what I'd be looking for. But this is just a really helpful guide for all of your states, all of your zones. You can come here and reference this and then figure out what you need to do. So when you look at the backs of most of your seed packets, it'll actually tell you how many days it takes for that plant to reach full maturity or its harvest. Not all seeds are created equal. This particular sweet pepper is only 70 days to harvest. Now, Rikki's spur of the moment purchase, which is probably going to be a one and done, the gourd loofah.
120 days to harvest. Is there anything else you think I should know?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. So another thing that's really important to know is how much growing space you're going to need. A lot of these plants require a certain amount of spacing between each plant. They need a certain amount of spacing between each row. You're going to want to make sure that whatever you plan to grow, you're going to have enough space for. Are you going to grow it in a 5-gallon pail, or are you going to grow it in a raised garden bed where you'll have a little bit more space? Another thing that's important too with this step is having all of the accessories that you're going to need to grow whatever it is you choose to grow. For example, like a tomato plant, you're going to want tomato cages, or even in the case of a cherry tomato, you might want a wall trellis. If you're growing the gourd loofah, you'll also want a trellis for this too.
He's not a fan of those.
No. The same thing goes for peas. Pea plants can grow up to 48 inches in height.
Wow.
Yeah, when a plant starts growing that large, they need some sort of a support like a trellis. Most simple plants like peppers, carrots, onions, lettuce, we don't need trellises. We don't need anything special there. We can plant that stuff right into our containers or into our raised garden beds and have no issues growing that at all. So you just want to know and be aware of what your plant is actually going to require so you have everything there to have a successful growth and harvest. Another thing that you're going to want to be aware of when you're picking out your seeds, things like carrots, onions, any kind of a root vegetable like beets, they need to have a nice loose soil so they can actually grow properly and reach their full size. If they're in clay, which is what a lot of our ground happens to be, it's really hard for those types of things that grow underground, even potatoes, it's hard for them to thrive. So you want to make sure that you have a nice loose soil. The only way we can really accomplish that is if we build some raised garden beds and fill it up with a very loose mixture of garden soil, compost, that type of deal, to make sure that these plants all have enough room to reach their full maturity and growth. Now, if you happen to have some of these plastic 55-gallon barrels laying around or have easy access to some, make sure you check out this next video here where we will show you how to repurpose these bad boys as raised garden beds.
From garden to home?
You're not in this alone.
We'll see you in the next one.